Hi, this is Philip Crone, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Success, Hope, and Encouragement. This is video number 7, Motivation and Success. So this video is directed again towards those millennials, those new college grads, trying to find a job or trying to get your career off the ground, or if you're like me, 23 years old, $200 in your pocket, and trying to figure out how am I going to become a millionaire. So I like to start by saying, motivation to me is the opposite of procrastination. And laziness is a word that we can't use if we're going to really try to be successful. We have to have more motivation than anything if we're really going to find the secrets of success. So I like to view kind of the analogy of this is like a rocket trying to get off the ground. And you have this destination, whatever it may be, and it may not be that you have to be a millionaire, but if you want to be very successful in life, it's certainly going to take a lot of initial energy, and that energy comes from motivation. So I'd like to give the analogy, I think we've all flown on a plane and we've gone through the process of, we know what time it's going to leave, and we leave our house, and if you're like me and you live here in Atlanta, the first thing that you'll check is the traffic report, because I think we have the worst traffic next to LA in the country. And you put a certain amount of time out there, and you get out on the road, and all of a sudden traffic stops, and you have this feeling that comes over you, or at least I do, and I think this is the ultimate motivation. And you look at the time and go, I think I can make it, but all of a sudden your heart goes a little faster, and you're breathing a little harder, and then you're driving a little faster, more aggressive, and you have got this cleared focus that I'm going to find a way to get to that airport. And ultimately, most of the time we make it, but that whole process that we go through is a great example of motivation. So how do we recreate that motivation in our business or our life or whatever we're trying to accomplish? And I think it all comes down to time. Time and deadlines, as well as I mentioned in a previous video, I think psychologically speaking, we're all motivated by pain or pleasure. The greatest motivation I think in the world is pain. The pain of failure, the pain of not coming through, the pain of going hungry, the pain of getting cold, on and on down the line. It is one of the greatest motivators that we do in life to avoid the pain. So for those of us that are really trying to be successful, you've got to really program your mind that I'm going to have to go through a little bit of pain if I'm really going to be successful. I think one of my favorite comments that I've often make is if you're going to be successful really, really early and it's easy, it's either you got lucky or it's illegal. For most of us who have to do it the old-fashioned way, you're going to have to go through a little bit of pain. But there's great ways to make that pain somewhat pleasurable by getting the results we're looking to, by believing in people, hopefully like me, that if you'll do some of these things, great results will happen. But I think there's no bigger motivator in life than time. So you've got to give yourself a deadline. I have to admit in life that I happen to love deadlines, and I don't usually do things unless I have a deadline. I can remember many times in my life where I had huge important deadlines, and I'm not talking about taking an exam, but big business reports that had to be done, and I almost thrived in that feeling of the airplane leaving, and I had to come through. And then I taught myself that I can come through. So I think one tip that I'll give for everyone out there is if you really want to motivate yourself, put a deadline. If you really want to motivate yourself, tell people about it. Put it out on Facebook or whatever it is. Put yourself out there so that you'll feel some pain if you don't come through with this particular deadline. In my case, I don't have to go that far. I like to make lists. I put everything down on list, and I go back to my list, and it reinforces me, and I prioritize. But generally speaking, I'll have my list based upon what I'm trying to do the day, the week, the month, the year, what have you. I think another interesting thing to think about when I talk about time is time that we know of. If you study the science in the universe, we know the universe is 10 to 13 billion years old. We know that Earth is somewhere around 4.5 billion years old. We know, us humans, Most of us will live anywhere between, if we're lucky, 80 to 100 years. So I think one of the things that helped me when I really hit me hard when I was 23 years old and trying to figure out ways to motivate me, I remember I put down on a piece of paper 4.5 billion years, and I marked off all the billion years. And once I got it to scale, I put down 85 years. And I remember looking at it, and I couldn't even hardly see the dot. It was such a small period of time. And that's just one example of how I think we can use time to motivate ourselves, because we're not here forever. Our time's running out, and I'll give an example about that in just a minute. In one of my previous videos, I talked about exercise and how important that is for success. I think what's interesting to note here is I've mentioned many times that I've been a runner for 37 years, 5 days a week. But I've learned in my mind that I don't really have to get motivated to run, because I've run for so many years, and I think I have a lot of things that I could lose. And again, when I put it out there and tell people you run, it's more motivating. But what I'm leading to is I have taught myself that my jogging every day motivates the crap out of me. And I've learned a few days that I miss that I don't feel nearly as motivated. So in a weird way, even when I don't feel like it, I love going for my run in my morning, because I know exactly how I'm going to feel when I come back. And the motivation level for me is times 10 to a large degree. I also use deadlines in my running. I love the stock market. I've been trading for many years. So I time my run somewhere around 8:50 in the morning. I go out for about a 40-minute jog, because I know that the stock market's open at 9:30 and I really want to see it. But the point I'm making there is that this really gets me out the door, because I'm using a deadline to motivate me. So find other ways that you can use deadlines that would motivate you to do things that are important, and hopefully, it'll lead you towards your success. An example that I used, and I was a sales manager for many years in the company that I grew and I sold, and we used to sit around the table, talk about how can we motivate each other, what can we do. And I remember one of the guys came up with a horrible example, but he goes, I know a way that I could get everyone in here to make 500 calls a day. And oh, really? Let me hear it. He goes, well, I could take your loved one and put a gun to her head and say, if you don't make 500 calls, I'm going to blow her brains out. Now, that's just a horrible example that this salesman gave me, but my point is, he was right. That is the ultimate form of motivation. And I think the only thing that I could pull from that, other than that's a grotesque example, was that we could all be motivated to do 100 times more than we can, but we got to find a way to do it, obviously legally and morally. But the lesson learned there is we've all got a lot of motivation in us if we can find a way to trigger it legally and morally. I think a slogan that I love to use in my motivational type world is do it now. Don't procrastinate. In other words, if something comes into your head and it's not that big a deal, don't let it go. Just sometimes reprioritize, drop what you're doing, and just do it now. I have found out, and I give an example in my book, that if you don't have that kind of mentality of little things that come up, customer calls, need something, hey, I'll get to it. No, don't do that. Just do it now if it's a 1 or 2 minute task. And this will clear your mind. And I think the mind has to be used for bigger tasks, for creative tasks, and I'm going to get into that in some future videos, but I like to give the analogy that your mind is a little bit like a river. And if you don't have this do it now mentality, your mind is going to get, or your river mind is going to get filled up with sticks, and things aren't going to flow very well. So much like the Nike commercial says, do it now. If you want to be successful, you better have that sort of feeling in everything that you do in your life, is do it now. So I think that making a list is important. Doing it now is important. Exercise is important. But there's one other analogy I want to throw at you that I think is always hit me. So picture yourself in a basketball stadium. Let's just say you're sitting with 30,000 other people, and all of a sudden the announcer comes on and he goes, well, Mr. John Smith, today's your lucky day. God's just contacted me, and he is going to let you and the whole crowd on the scoreboard know exactly how much time you have left on planet Earth. And all of a sudden everyone looks up there, he's got the pressure of everyone seeing it. Let's just say John's a 22-year-old, and all of a sudden it comes up and whatever, let's say it says 40 years. Imagine how John would react if it said 1 day or 10 days. I also like to throw in here, we can't drive ourselves nuts or be neurotic about things like this. I throw the Goldilocks theory into everything that I talk about. Too hot, too cold, just right. You've got to find the balance for you. But the message here is our time is not forever. Our time, my time, your time is ticking down right now. And if you want to be motivated, think about the fact that it's ticking down. And if you're like me, and I'm 55 years old, and I'm at that stage where a lot of my older relatives are passing on and parents are gone, you realize we're not here forever. So I think it's important to motivate yourself that we don't have all the time in the world. Imagine if you did have all the time in the world. No one would probably do anything. But we're only here for a certain period of time. So I think it's very, very important that we use that as a motivating factor without being too neurotic, and realize that we don't really want to live our life with regrets. So with that, I'm going to read just one little short paragraph from my book, which kind of sums that scoreboard theory up. So think about your time clock up in the air, how much time is on your clock, and you can actually put some time back on the clock by getting in better shape, eating better, and thinking better. Think about your time running down and see if it doesn't help you get off your butt and make some things happen today. That buzzer is going to go off, so just try to accomplish what you can before your time runs out. My goal is try to live my life without any regrets, which is one of the reasons why I got off my butt and got this book finished. Don't live your life with any regrets. Write down what you would want to do if you knew you only had a couple of years left in your life, and then do them. So that way you won't live with any regrets. So I'll end this by saying, this is my little slogan: success is from action, and action comes from motivation. So I can't motivate you. I'm the only one who can motivate me. You've got to find what pain in life you want to avoid. You've got to find some kind of timeline, because without a lot of motivation, true success will not come. So that's it for this week. Next week, I'm going to get into some really deep stuff for Philip Crone. Last 4 years, I have been meditating every day, and it's a pretty mind-bending experience, and I'm going to kind of share some of the things that I've gone through, and maybe you might be able to apply them in your own success journey. So hope you have a good week, and we'll see you next week. Thank you.